The date is August 28, 1986. The air hangs thick with anticipation at Toronto's Exhibition Stadium, where 61,000 souls have gathered beneath the Canadian sky, their collective breath forming an electric charge that seems to bend the very atmosphere. They have come to witness something extraordinary, something that transcends the mere choreography of athletic competition. They have come to see good battle evil in its purest distillation, to watch a beloved hero seek vengeance against a villain so unsettling, so fundamentally disturbing in his calculated malevolence that his very presence seems to darken the stadium. This is the big event, and while the marquee promises spectacle upon spectacle, it is the clash between Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Jake the Snake Roberts that has captured the imagination of the wrestling world. This is the moment when months of psychological warfare, physical brutality, and genuine fear culminate in a battle that will define an era. The match unfolds with the methodical precision of a nightmare. Roberts, draped in his signature darkness, controls the narrative with cruel efficiency. He dissects Steamboat with the cold calculation of a predator toying with wounded prey, each move designed not merely to defeat, but to humiliate, to break the spirit of the man who dared stand against him. For what seems an eternity, Roberts dominates, his python-like movements constricting around any hope the crowd harbors for their hero's triumph. The dragon appears broken, his fire extinguished beneath the snake's suffocating offense. Yet in professional wrestling, redemption often arrives in the space between heartbeats. Steamboat, summoning reserves of will that defy physical explanation, hooks his legs around Roberts' shoulders with desperate precision. The arena holds its breath as Steamboat rolls the snake into a small package for the decisive 3 count. 61,000 voices explode in unified catharsis, their roar echoing across Lake Ontario, a primal celebration of justice restored. But to understand the magnitude of this moment, to truly comprehend why this particular pinfall resonated with such profound intensity, we must journey backward through the preceding months to the genesis of a feud that would fundamentally alter the landscape of sports entertainment. The story truly begins on May 3, 1986, at the Providence Civic Center in Rhode Island, during Saturday night's main event. The match between Steamboat and Roberts was scheduled, advertised, and anticipated. What the audience received instead was something far more visceral, far more disturbing than any choreographed contest could provide. They witnessed an act of violence so shocking that it blurred the lines between performance and genuine assault. Before the opening bell could even sound, Roberts struck. The sneak attack came with the suddenness of a serpent's bite. But it was what happened next that would etch this moment into wrestling infamy. Roberts took hold of Steamboat's body over the arena's concrete floor. He was preparing to deliver his devastating finishing maneuver, the DDT, a move that in normal circumstances drove an opponent's head into the mat with concussive force. On concrete, it became something else entirely, a potential instrument of genuine catastrophe. Behind the scenes, a drama was unfolding that added layers of complexity to what audiences were about to witness. Roberts himself was deeply reluctant to execute the move on that merciless surface. Despite his villainous persona, he was a consummate professional who understood the razor-thin line between simulated violence and actual injury. He feared that Steamboat would be unable to properly protect himself. That disaster seemed not just possible, but probable. Vince McMahon and Booker George Scott, however, were adamant. They understood that genuine danger creates an electricity that purely choreographed action cannot replicate. They needed this moment to occur on the concrete to establish Roberts as something genuinely threatening, someone who operated beyond traditional wrestling villainy. Steamboat himself intervened, assuring Roberts with the confidence born of years of experience that he could protect himself, that he would not allow his head to strike the concrete with full force. Roberts, trusting in his opponent's skill and professionalism, agreed. What happened next validated every fear Roberts had harbored. Despite Steamboat's assurances, despite his legendary technical proficiency, the physics of the moment overwhelmed human preparation. The DDT was executed, and the sound that echoed through the Providence Civic Center was something Roberts would later describe as resembling a watermelon bursting, a sickening crack that immediately signaled catastrophe. Steamboat's forehead struck the concrete with full force. He was legitimately knocked unconscious, his head swelling 3 inches almost immediately. a grotesque testament to the impact's severity. In that moment, reality and performance collapsed into a singularity that transcended traditional wrestling storytelling. Roberts had potentially seriously injured a colleague, yet the show, as the old axiom demands, must go on. Roberts, staying in character even as he worried about Steamboat's condition, dragged the unconscious dragon into the ring. Then, in an image that would haunt viewers and cement Roberts' reputation as wrestling's most psychologically disturbing villain, he released Damien, his massive Burmese python, allowing the serpent to slither across Steamboat's motionless body. The tableau was nightmarish, the unconscious hero splayed in the ring's center, the enormous snake undulating across his chest and face, the villain standing over both with cold satisfaction. It was performance art of the darkest variety, tapping into primal fears and biblical symbolism. The serpent, that ancient emblem of evil, desecrating the fallen warrior. Audiences were confronted with something that felt genuinely transgressive, as if they were witnessing not sports entertainment, but something more unsettling, more real. This is what elevated the Steamboat-Roberts feud beyond typical wrestling rivalries. Previous feuds had been built on athletic competition, territorial disputes, or championship aspirations. The imagery resonated on levels beyond conventional heel heat. This was a personal violation. This demanded retribution, not just through athletic victory, but through moral restoration. The weeks following, Providence crackled with anticipation. Steamboat's recovery became a narrative unto itself, the visible swelling and bruising serving as constant reminder of Roberts' brutality. Interviews during this period captured Steamboat's transformation from genial babyface to something harder, something forged in genuine anger. He spoke of revenge with an intensity that felt authentic because on some level it was. The line between Ricky Steamboat, the performer, and the man who had actually been concussed on concrete had blurred, and audiences responded to that authenticity with fervent support. When the big event in Toronto was announced, featuring Steamboat versus Roberts in a snake pit match, where disqualifications would not apply, it became in many ways the card's emotional centerpiece. Yes, the event featured other major attractions, other championship implications, but what audiences truly hungered for was catharsis. They wanted to see the dragon breathe fire once more. They wanted to see the snake defanged. The match itself, as previously described, saw Roberts dominating with the methodical cruelty that had become his signature. He worked Steamboat over with calculated precision, each move designed to demonstrate his superiority, to prove that Providence had been no fluke, that he owned the dragon completely. For the 61,000 in attendance, the experience was agonizing. Watching their hero seemingly unable to mount any sustained offense, reduced to absorbing punishment like a training dummy. The modern fan, accustomed to rapid momentum shifts and frequent hope spots, might find such one-sided action tedious. But in 1986, this prolonged suffering served a narrative purpose. It made Steamboat's eventual victory not just exciting, but genuinely moving, a triumph snatched from the jaws of certain defeat through sheer will and one perfectly executed counter. That small package, those 3 seconds of pin, represented more than a wrestling victory. It represented the restoration of moral order, the triumph of perseverance over cruelty, of spirit over psychology. The crowd's eruption was not mere appreciation for athletic achievement, but rather a release of months of accumulated tension, fear, and hope. Steamboat had not simply won a match. He had survived, overcome, and ultimately conquered the darkness that Roberts represented. Yet the feud demanded one final chapter, one last confrontation to seal the narrative completely. On October 4, 1986, at Saturday night's main event, broadcast from the Richfield Coliseum in Ohio, Steamboat and Roberts met in their ultimate encounter, another snake pit rematch that would determine definitively which man emerged supreme from their months-long psychological war. This match differed markedly from Toronto's one-sided affair. Here, Steamboat demonstrated that he had learned from previous encounters, that he had adapted to Roberts' methodical offense. The contest evolved into a fierce back-and-forth struggle, each man answering the other's attacks, neither able to maintain extended control. It was wrestling storytelling at its finest. The hero had grown through adversity, had become stronger and more resilient, forcing the villain to abandon his calculated approach in favor of desperate aggression. The finish came when Steamboat, in a moment of inspired athleticism, leapt onto Roberts' back, latching himself on with the tenacity that had defined his entire career. Using his weight and leverage, Steamboat pulled Roberts backward, crashing both men to the canvas with Roberts' shoulders pinned against the dragon's body. The referee's hand struck the mat 3 times, and the feud appeared finally, definitively concluded. But Roberts, consumed by rage at his defeat, could not accept this ending. As Steamboat celebrated his victory, Roberts attacked from behind with savage fury. For a brief moment, Steamboat was vulnerable, defenseless, and Roberts seized his opportunity. He moved toward his bag, toward Damien, preparing to recreate that horrific image from Providence, to desecrate Steamboat one final time even in defeat. What happened next has become one of wrestling's most memorable visual reversals. Steamboat, demonstrating both preparation and symbolic understanding, reached into his own bag and withdrew his Komodo dragon. In reality, a baby alligator, but the symbolism was perfect. Steamboat wielded his reptilian ally like a talisman, advancing on Roberts while holding the alligator aloft. The snake, confronted by this unexpected counter, by this reversal of his own psychological warfare tactics, retreated. He gathered Damien and fled, leaving Steamboat standing victorious in the ring's center, dragon held high, having finally and completely vanquished the darkness that had haunted him since May. This feud represented something revolutionary in professional wrestling's evolution. Previous storylines had certainly featured personal animosity and escalating violence, but Steamboat vs. Roberts pioneered a psychological depth, a willingness to blur reality and fiction that would become the template for wrestling's most compelling narratives. The legitimate injury at Providence, the serpent imagery, the extended storytelling across multiple major events, all of these elements combined to create audience engagement that transcended traditional wrestling fandom. This was the golden era finding its voice, discovering that wrestling could be more than athletic competition or even simple morality plays. It could tap into deeper wells of symbolism, could create moments that felt genuinely transgressive and emotionally resonant. The feud helped fuel wrestling's rise by demonstrating that careful storytelling, commitment to character, and willingness to push boundaries could create spectacle that captivated mainstream attention. Steamboat and Roberts had crafted something that crossed the line between performance and reality, between entertainment and genuine emotional experience. They had created a feud that audiences didn't simply watch but felt, that lingered in memory not as matches but as moments of genuine drama. In doing so, they established a standard for rivalry that subsequent generations would study, emulate, and build upon. The dragon and the snake had not simply fought. They had elevated their entire industry, proving that wrestling at its finest could achieve a form of dark poetry, where violence became metaphor and victory became catharsis. This was storytelling that mattered, that resonated, that crossed every line between performer and audience, fiction and feeling, entertainment and art.